this one piqued my interest. It's got kind of a spicy tie, though. The Diablo 4 devs are facing reality by Bellior News. So I want to know exactly what he's referencing. So we're going to take a look at it.
Here's the deal, everybody. Diablo 4 is actually producing some numbers. And when you look at some of the core players, we're actually seeing people are kind of changing their tune.
Yeah, last season.
Though, I'm not here to gaslight you. Funny enough, that's not the point. I totally know that the Diablo 4 is no longer meh, sort of opinion Venn diagram, can only really expand outward slowly as
True, but season 4 actually, it was a pretty big jump. I would say that the other seasons were kind of maybe not even always expanding into good until season 4, and that's really when it started getting a lot better.
Patches and seasons roll on. The vibes very much for most people are, it's like Diablo 3 plus Loot 2.0, but without Reaper of Souls. You know, the thing that actually brought content and really tried to push the game forward. So today we're basically going to see, do they have a chance? Season 5 is pretty intriguing, but there are some big concerns. Look at this quote from Riker. Is Diablo 4 Season 5 in danger? Let's find out. I think it'll be fun. First up, I'm going to talk about what went wrong. So, Rod Ferguson spoke to Windows Central about Vessel of Hatred a little while ago, and he had some decent insights that kind of help us explain why Diablo ended up the way that it.
Okay, so we definitely heard feedback. We know people are excited by Paladins. Diablo 4 lead talks about taking a new direction with the Spiritborn class and more about Vessel of Hatred. I think Paladin would have been the safest pick. Like the one that they know people want would have obviously been Paladin. I am curious to see. We actually get to test the Spiritborn class. I'll be flying down the 11th, which is very soon, testing on the 12th, and we'll actually get to see what this class is like. So I'm wondering if it's more shaman, more druid, more monk, maybe a mix of all of them.
Was again, and I say again because both D3 and D4 launched essentially with borked systems. To TLDR what Rod said,
yeah,
it's
right? True.
They went in the Diablo 2 direction for D4 rather than double down on the Reaper of Souls direction.
Yeah, I don't know if they did really go in the Diablo 2 direction. Maybe in the speed of the gameplay, D4 was a lot slower in the beginning, but I just recently got through my playthrough of D2 all the way through Hell difficulty, and I'll be honest, I didn't really feel too much D2 in that. When I was playing Diablo 2, it didn't really remind me of D4 at all, even at launch. So that part's kind of curious for me.
Now, of course, if you've been playing Diablo 2 Resurrected, that might ring a bit strange for you.
Yeah,
His
okay,
point basically is like big grinds, longer gameplay. So very much not the gigafast chain running Greater Rifts that you would have been used to in Diablo 3. Now, I do think there's been a little bit of a benefit there. I do like having a death limit rather than a timer, so I think that's pretty good. But anyway, to say that team has had a rough few years is an understatement. Like, version 1 of D4 was actually an over-the-shoulder action role-playing game. That would have been completely different. Who knows? Maybe they were trying to take on Babylon's Fall. Anyway, the dev process was super hectic and the stakes were super, super high. Blizzard was basically screwed for ages. The team for Diablo 4 was really big and really expensive. And then, of course, all of the awful PR and an environment where Riot Games were just down the road offering massive amounts of money, some of which would prove to be perhaps a little bit unsustainable given that, they announced a big 5-year plan, and I suppose as 5-year plans often go, it didn't exactly work out for them. Anyway, overtly D4 is a massive success, the fastest selling Blizzard game ever. And
that's one thing we've had our feedback and commentary, and you've seen all the videos and stuff over basically the last year about it, and there's been a lot of positive times, there's been a lot of negative times, but the reality is, if you look at this from a numbers perspective, Bellier is completely correct here. The game was overtly a success. They made more money on this game than they've ever made on any basically game prior. So bottom line wise, Diablo 4 was actually a huge W for Blizzard.
And things quickly went wrong, just like they did last time. And you can basically see why. It's all about hypothesis, right? As Rod said, Diablo 2 is a pretty different game, more of a slow grind. But for Blizzard, right, a game has got to be mass market. That means big, high budgets, lots of fidelity. So what they essentially had was a minimum bar of just expense that was super, super, super high, and a design hypothesis that essentially was untested. And remember, they did not do any endgame beta testing, and the beta testing that did happen was late. It absolutely wasn't good. And if you're wondering why other action RPGs can just hit community feedback faster and actually give you the exact sort of game you want, basically it's because those are games made by fans, directly for fans, and not necessarily for legions of new fans. New fans would be nice, but hey, it's Blizzard money. They've got to try to get Call of Duty people playing Diablo. And we know they think that because there's Lilith running around in Call of Duty. Now, to do a quick dive into the numbers, because I like it when we can be grounded in just some numbers for our discussion. Okay, here's Steam for Diablo 4. 20,000 reviews all time, 2.5k recent. All-time reviews are 71% positive, while recents are 77. So you can
probably important to note here, I'm sure he'll get into it, but this released later on Steam. It did not release at the launch of this, or else I think the all-time reviews probably would have been more mixed. This was later on after patching and changes had already come out the game. You can see it released on October 17th there of 2023, whereas the game came out June 6th.
Can see that is increasing a bit. Now, Steam is obviously not the core Diablo audience.
Yeah.
Launched 10 million people were playing between console and battle.net, and since then both Steam and Game Pass have happened, which probably have increased the player count pretty substantially.
I think Game Pass had probably a huge, we have to say probably because we don't have numbers on that, but I would assume have a huge bump up. Diablo is exactly the perfect game to pick up if you already have Steam, Game Pass. Play basically for free. I mean, you're paying the subscription, but download it, play with a buddy, couch co-op. This is sort of how I feel like about Path of Exile 2. I feel like PoE 2 is going to have a pretty big bump for this reason. If you have good couch co-op on console, you're going to scoop up a lot of more, casual gamers, median gamers, whatever. Like the average gamer, someone who doesn't like just only blast ARPGs, you're going to pick up a lot more of those players through console if you can effectively download it through Game Pass. So I think a huge impact.
Now, for actual play numbers, we're limited to just Steam, and then seeing what the rankings are over on Xbox. So here's the Steam.
And there's no way that Steam is as relevant as like Battle.net, etc. The most of the dedicated players are not going to be playing on Steam.
Chart since November 2023. You can see that it opened to about a 10k daily peak. At least that's what it was settling into. Season 2 and Season 3 did not have big staying power. Season 2 was a little bit of a miss, most people thought. Season 4 is a massive spike. Pretty much had the game going up to around 29k and then hovering at a strong number, and then it surged. On June 9th, there's a spike that set it to an all-time record of 39k players, and that rapidly dwindled to 11.5k. But there is a reason there.
I don't know if it was too rapid, to be fair. Like I think that this held okay. This had a spike here on June 9th. You had the peak here, and maybe it decayed, but for being season, it was season 4. It's the season of an ARPG. People were testing out a lot more. I actually think season 4 held better to be, and maybe this is a sad thing to say, but I actually think season 4 held better than most of the other seasons. At least I can give you my own personal experience, which is normally these seasons peaked out for me at 2 or 3 weeks. Season 3 wasn't even that long. I bet the season 3 graph would have been, massive. In fact, we could probably see it in here. It would be a bigger dip if even more players were coming back. We had so many players coming back for season 4 because of the itemization rework. I think what happened is we have a lot of people in here just trying out the itemization to see what it's like, and then maybe not committing all the way. But I don't think season 4 actually went too bad in terms of audience retention. I saw more people actually engaging with the game, it felt like, than ever before.
A record of 39k players, and that rapidly dwindled to 11.5k. But there is a reason there. You can basically see their anniversary event, the free weekend, and of course the Xbox showcase just getting more buzz and eyeballs. And I do think that with the XP bonus, people get excited. You probably pull forward a lot of playtime from the future.
Yeah, that's a good point
right
by
now,
him.
because people know they can play more efficiently right now.
Yeah, there is the event. That's a good point.
Probably is.
That's a good point. And plus, they had sales going on. I think it was like 50% off. So there's probably some boosted stats going on. He's making a good point here.
Responsible for both the spike and, of course, the dip.
Yeah.
Now, all this means that they are teed up for Vessel of Hatred, but of course, before Vessel of Hatred, there's Season 5. Now, the idea for Season 5 actually caught my eye in a way that I think Season 4 didn't for loads of people. Season 4 is in...
Yeah, I agree. Season 4 is basically like going back to fix what was already a problem. And Season 5 actually felt kind of more exciting for me because Season 4 is like, all right, let's remake the base game. Season 5 is like, we're adding a game mode into the game, the roguelite. The roguelite mode in that, which I'm sure he's about to get into, ended up being kind of not that exciting, but the concept behind it was more exciting for me than almost any. Maybe it was the most exciting concept out of all of the seasons for me.
interesting because basically it was them acknowledging that some directions were wrong and changing a lot of the fundamentals of the game, doing things like improving the hell tides. That was all really good, but of course, what people want is new features, new experiences, something to actually make you want to play rather than less pain when you do play.
Yeah, correct.
And that's why when I saw why I quit Season 5 PTR and Diablo 4 Season 5 is in danger from Riker, that I thought, okay, maybe we should talk about this. Now, if you want more content from our team and you want to replace those spoken words with some written words, you can check out Loading Screen. It's available at bellular.games for our supporters. Essentially, it's our daily newsletter that we run during the week.
Oh, cool, he's got a newsletter.
Lots of fascinating stories, things that, of course, we can't fit into this channel, as well as Release Radar. Basically, it's a great way for you to be plugged into what's going on in gaming and I suppose get some different perspectives on things. And this week's episodes have been guest written by Matt because Connor is off for the week, so you can check those out. A big thanks to all of our supporters, and with that said,
that's kind of
time
cool.
to hop into Season 5. Here's basically the rapid-fire version of what's going down. There's a new mode called Infernal Hordes. It is a wave-based one. It's set in hell, specifically the realm of hatred. Hatred, of course, means Mephisto because he is the Lord of Hatred. Now, you'll know him if you've been playing Diablo 2 Resurrected, and of course, if you finished Diablo 4. So Mephisto seems to be the next big bad. We're gearing up to that, and the quest line that introduces this new Horde mode also is basically setting up the Vessel of Hatred expansion. Obviously, Mephisto helped us out in D4, but, you know, he's a big Lord of Hell, so it's not like he's really our ally. That being said, I can't believe they killed Lilith. I think she's criminally underused and basically one of their strong, like, real unique, just powerful villains. Also, the Book of Enoch is kind of metal, so I was sad to see her go. Let's talk about how the mode works then. So, you enter it using an Infernal Code.
You know, I just got a sidebar about this for a second here. The biggest shame with Lilith is I actually think I agree with him. She's a pretty cool villain in general. And I think she got a bunch of good cinematics, etc. I feel like she definitely had her place in the game. And she's the pinnacle fight. But the issue I actually had with Lilith is, I don't know if I haven't replayed the campaign since, but at the launch of the game, when you fought Lilith at the end, it was a completely quiet fight. She didn't have any voice lines. You just see her, she just fights, she turns into the second form, continues to fight. But there's no her like screaming, you won't get there, or, you know, whatever. There's no voice lines for the boss. So she was actually the boss that made me realize the most that what I liked about Path of Exile was you know, the audio of the boss fights and the music and all that. I feel like the Lilith boss fight was pretty decent, but it was underwhelming because of the audio. I've mentioned this before. So if I had to make one major feedback about the campaign in particular, the Lilith boss fight at the end needs some like oomph behind it, and particularly some audio oomph, in my opinion. But that's kind of a side point here.
Compass, and these are earned from doing endgame bosses, hell tides, nightmare dungeons, and whispers. When you're in there, you fight waves of enemies. The waves last 90 seconds, and enemies drop a currency called Aether when they're killed. Then at the end of a wave, you can choose between one of 3 infernal offers. Now, an infernal offer is basically a boon and
I'm curious what he's going to
like a kiss cursed.
Okay, I'm really curious what he's going to say about this, because this was the biggest issue that I had with this. I don't think it's unsavable. Like, they just need to change the rewards, but it's unexciting between the waves because it's just like more monsters and more Aether, or you deal more, you know, you receive more damage, but more Aether. Like, there's not really... I was expecting like you get cool powers or something, kind of like Vampire Survivors, you know, like those Survivor style games. But really, it's just Horde mode, and the Horde gets harder. So you don't really like it's not fun, really. It was like my major issue with it.
Design. Blizzard gave an example of increased elite damage done against you, but also you getting more Aether whenever you kill them. The idea basically is if you feel like you can push a little bit harder and you want some more rewards, you can do that. Then at the end of the run, you do a boss fight. That boss fight is against the Fel Council, which basically are fallen priests from Diablo 2. So you'll recognize them if you were playing D2 Resurrected.
The Fallen, the Fallen Council is actually pretty cool to add into the game, because after just having played D2, I just did my full like first hell playthrough with the expansion and everything. Actually seeing the council in there now makes more sense, and I think that's really cool. They're bringing some of the back of the Diablo 2 stuff in it, so now I did like that.
It is spent at the end of your run on equipment, materials, gold, and greater equipment boxes. Thing is, though, it all goes poof at the end of the run.
Yeah.
So you don't actually carry it over. It's very much a go in, earn shit, spend shit.
Which is kind of okay. It's not a huge deal, I guess. As if this episode wasn't
fun enough, now you get the pleasure of me waterboarding you through the internet with word salad, because it's an ARPG, to cover the progression and structure. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but it kicks off at World Tier 3, and the harder stuff opens up at level 100. Now, there are 8 tiers of Infernal Compass, but those tiers of Compass only drop at World Tiers 3 and 4. You'll then need Abyssal Scrolls to upgrade the tier of your compasses up to tier 8. We got tiers within tiers, currencies and currencies. I really do think that these games rely too much on currencies. I wish there was a different way of doing this kind of thing.
I have a mixed opinion on this one, which is that I don't think currencies are innately a bad thing. I think currencies are a bad thing if it feels like a chore and you're just having to do a menu to do a menu to do a menu. Hate to use Path of Exile again as an example, but more currencies in that game, while it can be annoying for inventory reasons and sorting and stuff, actually goes a long way to make the game a lot better because of crafting, etc. So currencies can be a way to accomplish something, a mechanic in the game that you need done when it is something that you actually need done. The process of like getting the Abyssal and then you use it on the compass to upgrade it, etc. I can see where he's coming from. It just kind of feels like a little extra step that's maybe not particularly needed.
Because, man, it just seems like if you want to acquire new players, this is a great way to confuse them and make sure they don't come back. Now, there's also good quality of life things. I'll rattle through them. There's no longer the need to reset dungeons to replay a endgame boss because basically they've added in a summoning altar and you can just summon it. Varshan now only requires malignant hearts. The other items that used to spawn him in are removed. They've made endgame bosses drop more gold instead of rare quality items, which is definitely quite nice.
Yeah, no reason for rares.
Summoning has been streamlined. Whisper bounties are actually faster to complete, and Helltides will...
this is one of my more favorite. It's a small change, but it's a more favorite one, which is that Whispers are a part of the game I actually quite enjoy. I think it's cool to go to a particular area and you get like a bonus bounty there, you know, or you're doing something else and you happen to get a Whisper from it. What I would always do is kill the PvP bosses for just a quick 10 Whispers real quick if I need to complete a Whisper. So I'm glad they're buffing these because it feels like the Whispers are a part that's never talked about. You never see people talking about guides or doing anything about min-maxing Whispers. You never see people actually saying, okay, I'm farming Whispers today. Like, it's just something that happens as a byproduct of doing other things. So continually buffing these and making these viable options, which they've been kind of consistently doing throughout the seasons, like bringing their level up more and more and more. I think if they continue to do that and do quality of life changes, etc., I think that's going to be a good way to go with Whispers, because I actually quite like Whispers. Maybe they're not 100% where they should be, or maybe not should, but 100% where people will run them more consistently. But I think that that's a good way to go, continually buffing this.
Spawn with enough Whisper bounties to earn 10 Grim Favors. Again, I know, word salad. What it basically means, though, is you do a Helltide, you get some nice progression, you go back to the tree because you got your 10 Grim Favors, and then you get some
Yeah, it's not
loot.
so complicated.
They've also made the threat scaling a bit more consistent in Helltides, but they've dropped the Helltide heart drop rate. It was kind of ridiculous, and basically you could just like chain kill the Helltide.
Now, I understood that people had a lot of these Baneful hearts. I didn't really see a necessary reason to drop them. I can understand why they dropped them. Maybe they don't want people only just sitting at the altar the whole time. I didn't really think it needed to be dropped. It is just an option that you can do, but I can understand it. I mean,
boss pretty much for the duration of the Helltide if you happen to be in a decent shard. They've also made it so that unique and mythic uniques can be found in Whispering Caches, the Obol Gambler NPC, and Tortured Gift chests in Helltide, so that means more players can get those, and they've increased the drop rate of the mythic uniques outside of...
Now, this is one I actually didn't understand, which is Resplendent Sparks and Scattered Prisms will no longer automatically be picked up. I think maybe the reason for this is that people were missing that they dropped, and so they're like, oh, where's my spark or something, but you still get it, and that's like a reverse quality of life. So that one was a little confusing for me.
Bosses. Treasure Goblins are also a bit more rewarding, and more classes can use more weapons.
Always a fan of more loot goblins.
UI, actually some great stuff. There's an auto pin where the game will put a map pin on the destination of your selected quest, or task. And that pairs with a compass, which is basically going to be part of your HUD. It'll circle around the player and point you to your map pin, which is really nice. So it's got good synergy with the auto pin. It's not quite the sort of map overlay in the middle of the screen that a lot of the big sort of big grinders want, but it still is nice. And
I'm still of the opinion, give people a map overlay if they want it. However, I will say this in defense of the concept of not having it. I do understand it a little better now. I played through D2 recently, and I used the corner map overlay, and I used that corner map overlay so much, I probably was only looking at the map in the corner 80 to 85% of the time. I barely actually looked at my character, especially while navigating. I was basically playing a game of there's two lines, and I have an arrow between the line. So I can actually understand why they chose to force that style of gameplay out. The only problem is, because we do have a mini map, you're still just going to be looking at the map either way. It's just kind of a less efficient way of doing it.
They've also done an interesting thing, an optional feature for audio navigation that gives you spatial
This is nice for blind players.
To direct you to your pin. That's actually kind of fascinating to me. We've got so many senses, and sometimes games don't use all of them. So the idea that you could actually hear where you're going, I think that's actually kind of neat. That all sounds like a pretty good plan.
That's nice.
But of course, no plans.
I was talking to TJ, the blind gamer. I know this is something in particular they really wanted with some navigation assistance, so I'm glad they got it.
Drives contact with the enemy, and the good news is at least that contact is happening on the PTR rather than it being live and a bit screwed, like with Season 3. Now, one of my go-to guys as somebody who is, I'm casually interested in the genre, but I'm not like a hyper gamer of the genre, so went to Riker to learn a little bit more because he's been doing some PTR testing. Basically, right, he found that the bosses at the end are essentially a good idea. Fighting 3 bosses at once ends up being more engaging than just fighting a single boss. I think that's definitely true. A lot of the Diablo single bosses,
I suppose,
they end up being pretty boring. His problem, though, was the different combinations of that council fight didn't feel meaningfully different enough.
Yeah, you're just going to melt through them, man.
Fundamentally, he does enjoy the mode, but basically there are worries. So you have the traditional problem where when it's too easy, the game mechanics basically don't matter. That's always challenging in a game like Diablo because that's very, very much an efficiency-minded video game. As an example, so much of, say, World of Warcraft's features for a long time outside of Mythic Plus Dungeons and Raids, they've just been piss easy by default, which has meant that none of the design that went into them mattered, which is actually why I'm pretty excited about Delves in the new WoW expansion. Turns out, when you actually tune your mechanics to matter, they matter, and that can make a fun game. Now, the good news is that can actually happen here. Per Riker, choosing boons and banes actually did feel meaningful. But there are problems. Some bosses have just got way too much health to the point where it seems to be like a PTR bug, and boon choices have a design that is very much about how greedy you want to go.
I have a different problem with this. I mentioned it earlier, which is like, it's not about can I beat it? It's not about the difficulty. Okay, it's not about it's too easy or it's too hard. It's about, is it fun? And it's just a big room in which a bunch of minions spawn. Now, I don't mind a horde mode. I think a horde mode's cool. But when I hear rogue, it's a roguelite and it has these mechanics and stuff, I'm expecting some cool mechanics. And it's just they become tankier or more of them summon, or stuff falls from the sky and hits you. It didn't really seem like there was much modifiers that really made it, kind of strong and wacky or whatever. It's just more HP type stuff. So my issue with it is just something different entirely, which is I just don't think people are going to play it very often. No matter, you can give them all the rewards in the world at the end of it if you want, but if it's boring to do, I just don't think people are going to do it. I guess maybe there's a counterpoint to that, which is Season 3 vaults people didn't like, right? The rewards were bad, but then they jacked the rewards way up and suddenly people were feeling pretty good about it. So I could be wrong about this, but it's just, that's the issue I see, is it just kind of just isn't fun. And I think fundamentally at the end of the day, what we really want out of games is for them to be fun. So for a mechanical game mode, I don't know, I'm kind of mid on it.
Riker enjoyed, he did say that maybe more build-altering builds would have been fun. I guess my perspective on that is, I can see how there's a design scope issue here. They probably want to do this so that it's decently generic so as to not interfere with buildcraft, and then also to manage development time. So Season 6 is launching with Vessel of Hatred, or probably quite shortly after it. That's actually kind of relevant because we currently believe that the Diablo team is largely split into a live and expansion team, so there's definitely going to be some sort of...
Well, it's not even a belief as much as it's kind of true because they said they're actively working on season 6 and testing it right now. I forget where it was in an interview or Twitter or somewhere, but in one of these they said they're actively working on season 6 right now, which I don't know why they would be lying about that. They have to be. That's going to be the next season, and season 6 comes with the expansion, so they're they leapfrog these seasons is how it works. So he's right.
Merging of things between those teams, because Season 6 will, of course, be built atop Vessel of Hatred. Now, there are other problems. He said that it's, to do with the quote, actually, because it's a pretty good one, it's not nearly rewarding enough, not by a mile. Rewards need to be increased by an order of magnitude, if not multiple. So, multiple orders of magnitude, I mean, hey, I'll take 1,000x the rewards, but I do get the point here. Slow rewards were a launch problem. Both D3 and D4 saw that increasing the pace, or at least increasing or improving the signal to noise ratio of rewards, really did help. The problem here, though, is that failure equals no rewards, and all the aether that you will have got would just disappear. Now, that can happen in some roguelike games, but usually there is a way to get some progression in between runs. So for this mode, it basically means you either collect the compasses over a while and then speed farm it at a low difficulty, in which case it's kind of mind-numbing and also probably not rewarding enough, or you ratchet up the difficulty to a point where it's actually fun, and the risk-reward gameplay of the boons and banes feels great, but because you go to 0 if you fail, that massively impacts your efficiency to the negative, and that will mean that a lot of players will basically not want to deal with the mode.
He does make one interesting point about roguelites having some progression outside of the mode itself. I think that's actually a pretty interesting point I hadn't thought of. If they added some kind of all the extra aethers you can take and dump into bonus stats, or, you get 1,000 aethers saved and you get to unlock the robot pet from season 3 or something, you get 5,000 of it saved and you get a mercenary in there, or you get 10,000 of it and now, you get your own hellfire that spawns from the sky. If they had ways to make it where, just modify it further, I think it might be actually more fun and give you some more depth behind the mechanic. Because as it stands, it's basically just a giant shrine event with rewards. And you can my problem with the rewards is you can juice up the rewards all you want, and that might make people do it, but they're doing it for the rewards. It doesn't mean it's a good game mode. So we can take any dog shit mode in the entire game. You can put anything that people hate to do. Okay, you could put Nightmare Dungeons and just throw in so many rewards into it. How you could put PvP and throw a whole bunch of rewards into it, to the point of where you're going to force people down that route because it is the best thing to do in order to get rewards. You can do that and people will go do it because of the rewards. That still doesn't necessarily make it a good game mode. So I actually think Bellier kind of hits a cool point here, where progression outside of the game mode itself might actually be an interesting way to go. Maybe it would make it more entertaining from along, because I think you both need the rewards to make people do it, but you also have to entertain them along the way, or else you're forcing them through something that's just blatantly boring. And maybe it's not so bad. It's not a disaster. It's not like the vaults where it's actively pissing you off. It's just not super exciting. So I'm mid about it. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. So I'm kind of I don't know if people are going to play it for weeks straight, basically, is how I feel. So maybe that outside the game mode progression or something like that. I hadn't thought about that, but he's right. Roguelites do actually have that.
I can see why the devs would do that, but to me it does feel like a bit of an optics problem. I mean, there's design stuff to talk about, yes, but optics. So a lot of players will think, oh, Diablo 4, not exactly sure about that. And then they might hear that, oh, whenever you die, it's just maybe the 20 minutes you put into the pretty hard Infernal Horde. That 20 minutes is just evaporated and has been rendered completely useless. To a lot of people, that'll just feel like an aggravating design, the sort of thing that could just make people not bother engaging with the system in the first place. So Riker's overall take basically is, there's great quality of life changes and there is potential with this mode. It will need refinement, and there are also problems with Sorcerer. I think that's really been the main one. Basically, some nerfs hit them hard. It doesn't really seem like there's been buffs to compensate. And I certainly say, I do think that it is okay to nerf in games. There's a sort of a new only do buffs movement. Thing is, though, some designs just break, right?
Yeah, that's fine. Nerfs are fine. You can balance stuff in games. It's fine. I think what people don't like to see is overwhelming nerfs and make the entire game feel bad, like we had in pre-season 1, where they nerfed armor, they nerfed damage, they basically destroyed everybody. all at once. So much that we had that like emergency apology campfire chat in which they looked hella depressed coming out there because the feedback was enormously negative.
If you do not nerf them. Essentially, this is what happens when you have multiplicative interactions rather than additive interactions. Things can go out of hand and you may need to just change how stuff works at a fundamental level, like, just by the maths. Thing is, though, while you do have to do that, you still are managing a player relationship, so when those nerfs do happen, I really think they need to be bundled with compensation buffs. That needs to be a bundle thing, not just a, hey, we've punched you in the nuts, and maybe we'll make you feel better in 2 weeks with a patch. So, if I was to do the bear case here...
And to be fair, like, I don't really think they've been doing like a ton of omega nerfs to feel absolutely terrible. I'd say the people that feel the worst right now are probably sorceress. Outside of that, I mean, as a druid, we lost shepherds, but like it makes sense to make shepherds something actually for companions. So it's not really like, it's like, okay, that's a bummer, but I get it. But they did what he's saying, which is they compensated with buffs to, moves across the board. People that are feeling bad right now are sorcerers. There's always going to be someone at the bottom of the list. And when it's the same person at the bottom of the list for so long in a row, then those people get upset. I know that as a druid player.
Here, they've done a new mode. It seems interesting, but it may not fit Diablo 4. If I was to put forward the bull case, I would say that look at Season 3. Season 3 launched with no PTR, and it really was a bit of a disaster for a few days because they rapidly changed up a bunch of things, and they really turned around player sentiment. I've got to imagine they were planning a PTR in general, but I think the Season 3 thing really just highlighted the need for one. That does mean that by the time this actually hits players, it should be better. I mean, I'll certainly say, like, listening to Riker's ideas of how to polish this thing up, I think they were really solid. One of them, right, was that if you die, well, instead of just all of your Aether going kaput, how about you go into some sort of shop room where you can buy permanent buffs with your Aether?
Yeah,
that would make a lot of sense.
I like that.
Way you could have some carry through and some progression within the mode. Anyway,
might even be able to carry some of those buffs. This is a weird pause. Might even be able to carry some of those buffs outside of the game too, sort of like Season 0 vampire powers. I mean, what if you just get like 1%, 2% more strength or something like that? I don't think that'd be the end of the world. A reason outside of just do it just to get more legendary drops. I guess the pit materials are pretty nice. There's a few reasons to do it. But I agree. It is missing something from the reward side of things. I keep getting focused on, well, just is it fun or not side? But, the point about it missing some type of reward is actually probably pretty well taken too.
Let's progress to Vessel of Hatred and basically work out what's the offer from Blizzard should you be interested. It's got a $90 Ultimate Edition, but that's basically because it bundles in a battle pass.
And which you don't need to buy, which just has a bunch of wings and pets and cosmetic horse shit that you literally don't need at all. You just buy if you're going to buy it, buy the normal version, unless you're just absolutely have to have that tiger pet or whatever. Like it's $40. I would say do the normal expansion one if you already own the game. Look at the standard edition with 35 pounds for it. So I would just do the base one.
And 3,000 platinum. Now the base edition costs $40. The deluxe one costs $60. And funnily enough, $40 and $60 were the price of the base and digital deluxe editions of Reaper of Souls, which was like, what, 2014? 10 years ago. Yeah, time sure does fly. Obviously, though, the big difference is in the in-game monetization. Obviously, Blizzard's side of that is, yes, we do have $25 or $30, cosmetics in our store.
Which I still honestly do not care about. My opinion on this stuff is if you want to sell cosmetics to support your game further, fine. It's a lot easier to stomach when it's a free-to-play game, and the only time that I really get kind of annoyed about this stuff is when the absolute best cosmetics in the game, which arguably is true for Diablo 4, are shop only, and there's no way to acquire them in-game. I think a solution to this is give people a way to slowly save up platinum from in-game gameplay. A lot of games do this where you can earn the premium currency by actually playing the game. Let's say you go through, you do all your season journey, you're I say free to play, but you've only purchased the game. You haven't bought anything else. You do all your season journey. Maybe the reward is you also get like 500 platinum tokens or something. People can save those over time, then use those to purchase some cosmetics maybe they would like in the store. You pair that with the ability to like lock a cosmetic. Let's say there's one that they're selling, but it's going to go away in 2 weeks or something. You can have like 1 or 2 shop locks, holy moly, then you lock whatever skin you might want. Over the seasons, you save up enough and then you can purchase it. I think that'd be a fine way. It would take people a while to get it. You can still sell your skins in the game. You have a free-to-play path to actually do it. It might make more people happy. I think, and you won't cost them too much in terms of potential, revenue loss either. I think that would be a fine way to do it. I was hoping that the leaderboard gauntlet might have had some cool rewards related to either platinum or skins or something like that. They didn't do it. So one of my feedback points was when they were selling the cool horse and all that, why not just throw that into the leaderboards and give it away or something? But of course, the answer is to make more money from selling the skins. So for me, I don't get mad about them selling in-game skins, but I do wish there was a path, even if slow, to progress to get some skins yourself without actually spending money in the game. Personally, that's my take.
But we're doing that because we need to fund all of the live service stuff. And I do understand the need to fund the live service stuff. I just don't really like their specific implementation. Gotta say, one thing that really...
I actually did just... one last point on this. I don't believe it when people say it's to fund live service when you are this big of a company. They do not need the money to fund the live service. This was a record-selling game. It's their biggest selling game of all time, and this is Blizzard. Okay, they don't need to sell a horse to make sure their company doesn't go under to fund this. So if that is the reason, I don't believe it. Now, if they come out and say that it's just to make more money, fine. I actually don't care. That's an honest answer. But the arguments that I see, and I'm not blaming this on Bellier in particular, but I do see these arguments, which is it's a live service game. They need them. No, they don't. Okay, they actually just... They just don't, but all right.
He did make me laugh, though, is one of the pre-order bonuses is the Mother's Lament legendary gem for Diablo Immortal. I'd almost like to go back to Diablo Immortal just to see what the hell is going on. How much more goofy and weird has it got? Anyway, one good thing I will know...
Immortal gets dunked on all the time, but let me tell you one thing, okay? The pay-to-win's the problem with it, but the game for a free-to-play ARPG is actually quite enjoyable, and they have updates even faster than D4. The amount of additional content that's come to the game, there's also 2 new classes. The amount of stuff you can actually do in that game is actually pretty good, and the in-game loop is not bad, and it has a better raid system, it has a better clan system, it has better PvP. Of course, pay-to-win ruins basically all of it, but outside of that, okay, if there was no pay-to-win in the game, Immortal was actually a pretty solid game. I thought it was a very fun game. It's just a bummer that, what happened with it.
There's no expansion early access. I've got to imagine they'll do it in the future, and I'm surprised they didn't do it here. That certainly is a good thing. Vessel of Hatred has got to do things that go beyond the dedicated ARPG genre to actually win people in. And they need to do that kind of thing because the development of a game like that is so expensive. They have just massive teams, essentially. I mean, at one point, I know that the D4 team was pretty much the largest one at Blizzard. I don't know if that's still the case, and we do know there were a few Diablo-related layoffs in the big Microsoft cuts. But still, it does seem to be a big team, and that basically means a absurd run rate on a monthly basis, and that means they've got to make the money. Because this is not a situation where the profits of this game go into the coffers of Blizzard and everybody is happy. No, Blizzard in the past was a publicly traded company that had one big bad set of incentives. Now, it of course exists under Microsoft, another publicly traded company, which still does mean that a lot of those rough sort of incentives are still there, as compared to places who have got a more private ownership structure. Thing is, though, that makes things a little bit tricky with competition in this space. They've got to go for that broad audience to actually get their money back in, but doing that is sometimes going to be to the detriment of the most dedicated fans. Fans who will probably be playing Path of Exile 2 early access.
True.
In terms of endgame features, we don't know everything for Vessel of Hatred, obviously, but we know they're doing, a co-op endgame dungeon that's supposed to be pretty damn hard. That's maybe giving me a bit of a reminder of, I don't know, like a Lost Ark raid or something. That definitely feels like the older design of Diablo 4. So again, will you have that problem where the live team have learned loads and loads and loads of lessons, but the problem is the learnings of those lessons came in too late?
I don't know, maybe. I'm not going to put the cart before the horse. I got to test it out here in just a few days, and I got to find out at least part for myself. I don't know if it's just a class testing. They're only going to put me in the base game, or if I actually get to play a deep amount of the expansion or not. But I'm willing to give it a fresh perspective and take a look at it and see if it's enjoyable or not. If it's a bad release of the expansion, I think that would be a very unfortunate blow for D4, right, as it's trying to recover a little bit. Season 4 was a much needed resurgence in terms of good feelings about the game. Season 5 seems like it's probably going to be mid, to be quite honest. So if they go from a really good Season 4 where everyone's like, thumb up, this is going the right way, to a mid Season 5 and then a dog shit Season 6 with a bad release of an expansion, that would be a way to bury the game. So I'm hoping it's the opposite. I'm hoping Season 6 is as good, if not better, than Season 4. People are like, thumb up, the season's great. And then the expansion's like fire. We have a great campaign. The new class is dope. The new in-game's dope. If they actually nail all of that, all right, baby, saved. This is Blizzard's last chance, is what I'm saying.
To be basically worked in to the core design document, right? The sort of hypothesis that they were setting forth with Vessel of Hatred. So we'll have to see what it's like when it makes contact with the enemy. And by the enemy, I mean us, the players. And if you want my personal take on Vessel of Hatred, basically it is this. Stuff looks pretty interesting. I love the feel of the Diablo world. The cinematic that they showed off recently, I thought was absolutely goddamn spectacular, and I want an RPG of that. I love the tone. I love the visuals. The world building, the little details in D4 were really nice. Thing is, though, it felt like a game with a bit of an identity crisis, essentially a push and pull between the very broad audience that they want to achieve and then the people who actually stick around and play the seasons. I think that push and pull will still be a factor in Vessel of Hatred. It's introducing mercenaries to fight with you, and as much as the new class looks cool and certainly is very, very well themed with the expansion, it's not the Paladin or the Crusader, which are kind of like massive fan favorites, sword and board, holy light, big,
People would have liked the Paladin when it comes out. They don't have to have the Paladin in order for the expansion to be good, however. I myself played the Paladin in D2. I would have loved to see the Paladin in D2. I guarantee you they're saving the Paladin for like the second expansion or something. I think they did state there was going to be more than one expansion. So they'll probably, tease everybody along with the Paladin here after this expansion comes out until next one or something like that. Hopefully the Spiritborn's dope. If the Spiritborn is dumb, that would be a huge bummer. I get to find out again soon. But I don't think we need the Paladin to expand. And to be honest, as much as the Paladin would have been cool, I care less about the new class as much as I do about how good is the new in-game, what does the expansion bring? Because one new class inside of a game that just becomes worse is still a dead class. No one's going to play the game, no one's going to play the class. So if they make the game even better, then that's what I care about even more. But I understand why people would want Paladin. I mean, Paladin is like a classic.
Smashy god energy archetypes, which we know are fundamentally appealing. And that's the tricky thing. So the question is, how much of the learnings of D4, the live game, have been folded into the fundamental design of the next expansion? If they're able to pull off a Reaper of Souls, then I think we really could be going somewhere.
Yeah,
that
agreed.
Being said, while I do think the whole jungle area looks really cool, and I thought the cinematic was pretty awesome, it did not grab me in the way that Reaper of Souls did. I thought that Reaper of Souls was a real solid shot. So who knows if it'll get the cut through. What I do know, though, is it releases October 8th, 2024. Path of Exile 2 beta was delayed from June, but will still be in 2024, which means we'll have a head-to-head fight, Path of Exile 2 versus Diablo 4. And I'm very much down to compare those two games. So
I bet that they stagger timelines. I bet GGG releases PoE 2 after the expansion comes out. This expansion comes out, I believe it's October 8th. I would bet they give it a month and then release PoE 2. I don't think it's in anyone's best interest to release at the same time and split their player base. If they let D4 expansion drop and sizzle a bit and then kind of, have the first little bit of hype die down and then they drop the console, they can be the second person who picks up the hype and then let the D4 die out sooner. I bet that's what PoE 2 would do, to be quite honest with you.
So let me know then, what do you think? And my final question, right? So many games like this just end up being buildcraft, near infinity progression, big hard thing at the end. And it always raises that problem of, you get that sort of goopy gamer brain stuff, that number go up, right? That feels
number
good.
Go up, green arrow.
Great. But in terms of the final reward, it's like, oh yeah, we did the end game Crucible. I don't know. Let's just call something the Infernal Domination Crucible. Let's say that's the hardest thing in the latest season of the game. You hit the end and that's it. I guess that's why for so many people, hardcore is appealing, because hardcore probably injects just a shot of meaning into a genre that otherwise is inherently an endless, near meaningless progression treadmill. Is there a way to solve that problem for you without resorting to a hardcore mode? I would absolutely love to know what you think there and how a sustainable endgame could actually be made.
So after playing Diablo 2, I 100% believe the answer is itemization. People will kill the same boss over and over again. People will run the same campaign over and over again. People will absolutely do the same thing in the game over and over and over again. You either need to give them personal achievements like RuneScape, where you have like skill capes, max cape, chase goals to yourself for your character, or chase items in which you choose to possess that ramp your power. Either way, it's about your character progressing. So you cannot have consumable content that people be the boss and the game's over without a reward tied to those types of bosses, and have it be repetitive in nature in which your character continues to progress. That's why people are still playing Diablo 2. After playing through Diablo 2, the Diablo franchise makes way more sense, to be quite honest with you, because you play through it and you're like, holy shit. I mean, in hell difficulty at the end of it, I beat the game and I'm still getting drops where it's like, this is insane. Like, this item is absolutely bonkers. You know what I mean? And it's like, I probably will never see another item like this, or you chase rune words, etc. So I believe the answer to his question is 100% chase related items. And I think that's why Uber Uniques don't actually work for Diablo 4 as a chase item, because they're all the same. So you get an Uber Unique, it's done. You could argue that it's sort of like rune words. Okay, fair enough. But the rune words you actually build up to piece by piece to actually get. And a lot of the items in Diablo 2 that I was getting that are so good aren't actually rune word items. Like, they're like gloves that have like plus to skills, or, I got this wand for a sorceress that I don't actually play. That was like +2 to all skills, faster cast rate, +2 to the passive, +3 the frozen orb. Like, I had all of these crazy stat lines just stacked on top of together, and everyone was freaking out about it. And it's like, okay, well, that kind of can't happen in Diablo 4. And the games that people continue to play for thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours, years literally later, they all have that itemization change. I'm going off a bit of a tangent here, but I think the answer to his question is absolutely itemization. Anyway, let's hear his last words.
That's it from me. I will, of course, be back tomorrow, because there's some drama around headlines and Helldivers.
Shout out to Bellier. That was a good video, man. That was very well done. I have a link down below in case you wish to watch it. And we will be live right now as of the posting of this video, in case you wish to come by the live stream also. But good video. I agree with a lot of what he had to say. I think the point there at the end, in terms of how do you make people play it, again, is itemization. And I think in terms of Season 5, which is kind of what the video about concerns about Season 5, for me, just make the game mode fun. I think Riker's point about rewards is very astute as well. But if it's just for good rewards, but it's not fun, then people probably still won't play it, would be my opinion. Sort of like vaults. But anyway, that's it. Love you all. See you on the next video. Have a wonderful day.